Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.
Votre attention s'il vous plaît. IPTV Services. Tempo Afrique TV vous offre 6000 chaînes de télévision en direct de l'Afrique, de l'Europe et des États-Unis. Toutes vos chaînes de télévision préférées sous un seul toit. Pour des informations, appelez le numéro suivant +1 612 804 02 95 ou allez sur notre site web tempoafrique.com. Achetez maintenant $193 pour toute l'année, plus l'expédition et le TV Box.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tempo Afrique TV. Welcome to our show, What's Up Africa, Que fait l'Afrique. Today we have a special guest and we have a topic for you. We will be discussing for about 45 to 50 minutes. The title is Keeping It Real. Jonathan Sandy, also known as JPJ, for President 2023 in Sierra Leone. Welcome, Dr. Sandy.
Good afternoon, good evening, and it's my pleasure to be here with you, Professor Wale.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sierra Leonean and all Africans and the whole globe, the African diaspora, Sierra Leone, the people of Sierra Leone, people of Sierra Leone in the diaspora, wherever you may be, and all Africans. This man is not new to you. Dr. Jonathan Sandy holds a PhD, and he is actually the chairman of the Regional Center for Governance and Security Policy Initiative, and that is in West Africa. You know what that is all about. He worked with the African Union, he worked with ECOWAS, we worked with the UNDP, the United Nations, well-traveled and diverse in the politics of many countries on the continent. So he must be first and foremost versed in the politics of his native Sierra Leone. We have questions for him, and he will be answering his questions, but you have numbers on the screen. Please feel free to call one of those numbers and ask him questions and make a contribution to this discussion. It's a brief and really insightful interview. That's what it's meant to be. Dr. Sandy, what, in your opinion, was the state of the union in Sierra Leone like today? If you were to be president, given the State of the Union address, what would you say, Dr. Sandy?
Thank you, Prof. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and thanks to many listeners who I'm sure are very familiar with your program, the Tempo Africa TV. And I know that, and I want to take this opportunity, you and your crew, to really thank you for amplifying the voices of Africans. I mean, I often say the difference between the African Union Charter and the United Nations Charter is a principle of solidarity. So what you are trying to do is not interfere with the sovereignty of Sierra Leone, but in the principle of Africans for Africans. How do we promote the concept of solidarity on the continent? This is what inspired me with the work you do at Tempo Africa. So thank you again. In this context of Sierra Leone, as you know, I don't need to rehearse this, Prof. Our society, as you see from the profile, before I left the shores of Sierra Leone in 2004-05, appointed by the United Nations, I served in many capacities, both as, but the last one I did before I left State House was when I was the Chief of Staff and National Security Advisor, particularly under President Ahmad Tijan Kaba. May his blessed soul rest in eternal peace, oh Lord, we pray. Now, so in terms of my conceptual thinking, Sierra Leone has moved what we call the conflict transformation part, both in terms of democratic and economic transformation. But what really links up my mind is how much have we come. This year marks 21 years since the war ended in Sierra Leone. And in that context, if it is 2 decades and 1 year, the word conception is in my mind is that, oh, okay, from 1996 to when Kaba left, he moved Sierra Leone in the conflict transformation part from war to peace, and then from peace recovery to peace consolidation to sustainable development. He handed over power in 2007. In that conflict transformation spectrum, the thinking is that, yes, Kaba did well during his 2-term regime to move Sierra Leone from war to peace, which everybody was happy. DDR's disarmament, the restructure of the army, the police, the civil service reform, public sector reform. So the nation-state venue, the unity, the union you talk about, his ability was to promote inclusive governance, enhancing political cooperation among the 18 tribes and all the political parties who contested the election that year. Imagine in 1996 when multi-party democracy ushered in Sierra Leone, Prof. And my audience, we had about 23 to 25 political parties. And therefore, Kaba, in that transition, in the midst of war, was able to move Sierra Leone from war to peace. Now, in this context of moving from recovery, peace consolidation, to post-war reconstruction, I believe that the immediate past president, His Excellency, former President Ernest Bai Koroma, and then now President Mada Bio, we have had numerous complex and multiple challenges where we have been unable to consolidate the peace efforts what Kaba left behind. And as I speak to you, our country, in terms of external dimension, after the war, since we have not been able to consolidate the gains very well because we have been affected by not only domestic challenges such as wasteful spending and corrupt practices, which were some of the root causes of the war, but however, we have also been subject to external threats such as global health crises. Imagine after the war, we were going on the trajectory path where economic recovery was solid. We registered between 2011 to 2013 to 14, the highest GDP per capita in the sub-region, 21.1%, because of the immense evidence of the real sector had opened up after Tijan Kaba left. We had iron ore, bauxite, rutile, the main basket of main sources of revenue for Sierra Leone. But unfortunately, by the time the economic revamping was taking place so that we can improve the economic life of our people, then Ebola, global health crisis, we are shocked by Ebola. Ebola came in 2014, and all the economic gains we had made, plus the fall in world commodity price index, especially primary commodities like iron ore, bauxite, and rutile, and the diamonds, then we saw a reversal. And then by the time President Nkrumah was leaving office in 2018, where we conducted election, Prof, we are faced with economic austerity. And when they say economic austerity, you know what it means.
Yes.
And then, yes, so our people, poverty came in. Imagine 2018, by 2019, we saw the emergence of global health crisis again, COVID-19. And then with the Sierra Leone Imagine a fragile state which has come out of war, conflict for many years. Yet our institutions were fragile, the poverty level, the income inequality was all over the place. We have not been able to deal with victims of the war, whether they're in a better situation today or better off, especially in terms of transitional justice and sustaining the reparation, victims compensation and reparation programs. On the basis of that, the COVID-19 had come, and in my honest view, plus the new emergence of what we call regional identity politics, tribal and regional identity politics have come. We are a highly polarized society now as we move into June election. So in other words, the question you asked about what is the state of the union? The union is highly divided, divisive politics, politics of identity, tribal and regional is persistent. And we see that even your classmates, some schoolmates you went to school with, private college, primary school, we don't talk to each other in some occasion. So our society is highly polarized along identity and ethnic line. And even some of our political system and party structures are based on predatory politicians, those who predate on their tribes and ethnicity. So as we go into election, the multiple and complex challenges, both domestic needs and poverty, it's really problematic. And therefore, it is the challenge of how do we put Sierra Leone back on track beyond politics of exclusion and corrupt regimes, which is the campaign message I will definitely be working on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. It's brilliant. Now you know and you're aware, and you're making people aware of the challenges ahead. I hope and I can feel that you are up to those challenges. And remember, in 2018, you were almost, a last-minute candidate because the situation was so glaring, and they needed change. They needed somebody like you, but you couldn't win at that time. What are the chances this time around, and what has changed since then, making you, confident, more confident that you will win this election, Dr. Sandy?
Yeah, Prof, I'm more than confident because the reality, the citizens of Sierra Leone, they have realized that we need to change our political culture. They need somebody who has the ability, the political leadership style, to offer and deliver certain public policy priorities. It is not, we are past the time when people should vote based on tribal and regional campaigns. What are the public policy issues I mentioned to you? How much is the cost of living affecting us? How is the economic hardship? Staple price items like rice, oil, things that have to do with vegetable profit. It is not funny in our culture, that's how we say it. It's not a funny situation. I know people are arguing that this is a global phenomenon, but I have the ability to nurture what we call, from somebody with a national security background. Yeah. I know the notion of national security is about threat analysis and finding solution to threat. What are the threats to the people of Sierra Leone? I took an oath in the 90s to say I will ever secure the unity and the national security interests of Sierra Leone. I know the core values, the policy agenda, and I know the worth of the 1991 Constitution, the supreme rule of law. And those oaths I took many years back before I didn't leave Sierra Leone. When the war was in thick and thin, I was there. We did every little bit with late President Chijan Kaba to move Sierra Leone from war to peace. I want to see how much that we can consolidate that effort of the Chijan Kaba regime. I know the path, the conflict transformation path, to consolidating peace, towards democratic consolidation, and to secure economic prosperity of our country. And this is not happening. This is no challenge, it's no hypocrite. We have to face it that who has the better political leadership style to combine Sierra Leone domestic policy needs and foreign policy needs. So in a world of interdependency and globalization, we can survive. We are only 8.2 million people, less than the population in Lagos or some parts of Senegal or Dakar. But we can survive. The question is, how do we survive within the Mano River Union space, where you have Liberia, La Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea-Conakry, and Sierra Leone, 4 member states. We are in a union. How do we also survive within the ECOWAS, the community we belong to, me and Malik and all of you? 16 to 17 member states, but with a population of over 400,000 people, 400 million people. How do we survive? And above all, at the African Union, 55 member states, with over 1.3 billion people, an opportunity on the continent. So the question is, are Sierra Leoneans inspired to move our country after war, where we are persistently 2 decades from now, we are still living the concept of consumption. Braju Bobodia, that means handouts. The youth are vulnerable. Everybody, the symptom of dependency has not gone away. We need a leader with the ability and skills to move, to inspire our people, to say there is no free meal. We have the factors of production are so abundant in Sierra Leone, land, labor, and capital. There is my son named Sandy, means my great-great-grandfather, who moved through the Mali Empire and the Songa Empire, through the desert, Sahel, the Mali, and then moved down to the coast of Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. We have the tendency to work very hard. Therefore, as Sierra Leoneans, my motion is, I've said it clear. I believe that I'm going to win this election because I'm the only candidate that have the ability and skills to make Sierra Leone, to secure the interests of Sierra Leone and put Sierra Leone back on track beyond the politics of exclusion, corruption, wasteful spending, so that our poor people, the marginalized, the vulnerable, those who have suffered the brunt of global health crisis, those who have suffered from the war, the income inequality between the rich and the poor, I can close that gap. With my vote, the reason is simple. I have over 15 or more years domestic policy experience, having worked from village level, fisheries and communities as a fisheries economics, and then moved down to State House as a national security person who was particularly responsible for reform of our security and intelligence, including economic security agenda, which I continue to promote. The black economy, those who have moved our nation from state capture to organized crime and corruption. I think with my background in national security, somebody who can deal with the criminal justice system, I think I will be better placed to fight for the interest of the poor. And therefore, I am very strong that my policy agenda, which I'll be speaking to during this campaign, will let the people of Sierra Leone win for me. It is no more time for tribal or regional campaigns. It is that person who can solve the policies, the issues that affect Sierra Leone. What are the gross human rights issues we face? What are the issues that have to do with economic hardship? What are the issues with my background as an economics in Frabe College, somebody who studied public policy and management, and it is not only theories, but somebody who have moved Sierra Leone and the international community, being regional director for ECOWAS, and had worked on the continent, many places, as you mentioned, Prof. I think I have the ability and skills to manage Sierra Leone interests and for Sierra Leone to survive in a world of regionalism and global interdependence.
Thank you very much. It's crystal clear. What you're saying is crystal clear, but people will still be wondering if you could sum this up for them in terms of your vision and your priorities. What will be your priorities, for example, in the first 3 months in office?
I have shortly, Prof, in the next 1 or 2 weeks, the launching officially what I call my statement of declaration. What I refer to, what is my vision as a human being, my thinking, strategic strands of thinking, of what do I see Sierra Leone, what is the future of Sierra Leone I want to see. I've tabled that in what we call the Big Six agenda. And I am very happy the Big Six agenda is what I think we believe will put Sierra Leone back on track in terms of our public policy priority. Having mentioned many of the complex challenges we face, are we united as a nation? Are we working under a common national agenda? No. And in that case, my vision for Sierra Leone is to ensure that we put our focus on 5 or 6 policy issues. One, how do I enhance the unity of Sierra Leoneans? We are not bad people. Those who Mali can tell you, those who have been to Sierra Leone, they say Freetown is our capital city, meaning we are free and we are tolerant. you come to the street of Freetown, you know we have gone through war. Yes, but the people are tolerant. Just like many Africans, we have the culture of tolerance, solidarity. So my first priority to deal with is to overcome the challenges that relate to our divisiveness. We are not together as a nation and a people. That's why my party ideology is a cut-across agenda. So we say we are tired of tribal and regional ethnicity, which is because it is only when we are together, Prof, under a common national agenda that we could be able to secure economic prosperity for all Sierra Leone. So my first policy agenda is to ensure that we nurture the unity of all Sierra Leone. And I will do this by making sure that I come back on track to put the constitutional review process back on track. We need a new constitution. One of the things when boys like us were part of the negotiation of the peace agreement, whether the Abidjan peace agreement, the Conakry peace plan with Johnny Paul, and then the final one, the 1991 Lome Peace Accord. The negotiation process was very clear. Parties to the conflict were very concerned that we were moving, after many years, the root causes of the war was one-party state, bad governance. And therefore, the constitution we have, the 1991 constitution at the moment, it mirrors a one-party state. Too much power in the hands of the supreme authority, that's His Excellency. Without checks and balances, it may be difficult. The independence of the judiciary is a problem. And therefore, when I come, my first focus to deal with political pluralism, tribalism, divisiveness, and the aspect of bringing us together under a common national agenda is to deliver a new constitution. I will ensure I empower the Law Reform Commission, who has been moribund. They lack resources, they lack affordable things. So my job will not be a top-bottom approach. The approach where previous presidents or people who are predecessors have used in terms of review and passing into law the new constitution have been top-bottom. I want to see an organic process where I will devolve this process in terms of process and approach of the constitutional making process through the Law Reform Commission, which is, by the way, established by an act of parliament. I do not want to see a constitutional reform committee. We have, after the war, the parties to the conflict. I was here. A law was passed to establish a Law Reform Commission during President Tijan Kaba's time. And that Reform Commission have mapped out all the gaps in our laws. Let us take the constitutional review process back 20 years after the war. We have not been able to review our constitution to say we have a new Sierra Leone and a new state. My first agenda is to make sure I push that constitution to not only as a legal instrument, but I know constitutional process will involve dialogue, national dialogue, community dialogues, to inspire Sierra Leoneans, to make sure that we gain our dignity in the world of civilization. But I think the route I will take is really to finish the constitution and make sure that we put it to a referendum through the Law Reform Commission. And my obligation will be simple, making sure that the national budget allow the Law Reform Commission to have that. So that would be my first priority, as you asked, constitutional review and complete sending it to referendum so that we can inspire Sierra Leoneans that we have enough factors of production, land, labor, and capital. How do we engineer ourselves and say we should be self-reliant? We should move our nation where 75% of our population relies on consumption. How do we move our country from being consumers to producers? So as the African Union Continental Free Trade Agreement now is in place, in terms of trade liberalization and competition, we can survive. We can sell. Nigeria alone has 200 million people. The whole West Africa is 400 million. But as a small country like 8.92 million, if we produce our goods and services with external trade deficit, I'm sure we can be able to survive and even be with countries like our middle-level income, Mauritius, for example. I'm envy of them, because they are now middle income, a small island, Mauritius, #1 on Africa. Why would Sierra Leone, 8.2 million people with abundant natural resources, 25 mineral resources, including diamond, titanium, iron, just like Congo, Prof. But we still wallow in abject poverty. The poverty index is so miserable. Income inequality between the rich and the poor is hopeless. So my desire is in the first 20 days, get the constitution doing. Number 2, fix the economy. The economy is not working for all. There is income inequality between the rich and the poor. For every 10,000 loans we make, research by Oxfam and UNDP suggests that every 10,000 loans in our local currency, which the National Revenue Authority puts into the single treasury account, that's the National Consolidated Fund, 46% of that 10 billion goes to 1% of the population, that's the political elite. And then 16%, which is about 1,600 out of 10,000 billion, 16% is the only thing that goes to 50 to 60% of the poor for vulnerable programs, social investment program for the poor. Youth includes youth across that, victims of war. In general, vulnerable population, the benefit, who are the mass of our society, only benefit 1% or what I call 16% of every 10. Is not fair. We need to readjust the economy to work for everyone. And I am coming with an economic security agenda. When I say economic security agenda, Prof, it is different from macroeconomic policy or the traditional World Bank and IMF. No, the black economy is what I will deal with. I have the skills and ability based on my knowledge in economic intelligent management, being the economic dimension of national security, which I was specialized in when I was in State House in the Office of National Security. I will ensure that the criminal justice system works very well, so that the wasteful spending, the corrupt practices, we can free the economy from elites who have captured the state with organized crime and laid the path for financial corruption. That money alone, I will make sure that those cartels are breaking by the two elites who have resulted to state capture for unexplained wealth accumulation. The poor and inequality is so abundant. So I'll fix the economy to work for everyone. Make sure that the economic move our nation from consumption to production to make sure our people have those small revenue. So the income inequality and poverty we can deal with. So I'm very much concerned that my priority in the first 100 days is to focus on securing the economy of Sierra Leone, to make sure that the economy functions, not depending on donor aids, but debt release. I will not go and borrow money for the sake of non-public policy priority. I will borrow money not for the sake of debt management, because what is killing us now in Africa and in Sierra Leone is the level of external debt. And sometimes many of these debts we take are irrational to the poor. Everybody is now into infrastructure, energy, and that. Yes, it is fine. I see those projects as a medium of making the ends meet. But what is very important, how do we deal with the high level of unemployment? 75% of our youth are unemployed. How do we deal with the poverty-ridden things? The farmers are not occupied. They don't have productive means. So the point is, we need to produce what we even eat. And therefore, my third policy agenda under the Big Six agenda is to see how we increase food production. And in that case, I mean, if we say Ukraine, Russia, Africa is hopeless. I'm sorry as African. We say because of the conflict in Ukraine, Russia, we cannot feed ourselves. 1.3 billion Africans. And in our situation, it is worst. Around the streets, everybody say pepper, jelly, coconut water has moved. Inflation rate is over 200% in our nation. Jelly, shrimps, lobsters, Sierra Leone is just abundant. But the fact is everybody go, oh, I went to number 2 river in Sierra Leone. It's so beautiful. I ate a lot of lobster, lovely fishes, barracuda, snow. We have 253 different types of species of fish in the Atlantic, in what we own, what we call the EIZ, the EEZ, Economic Exclusive Zone, which is 200 nautical miles in our maritime language, which Sierra Leone is Sierra Leone's own sovereignty. And in that water, in the Atlantic, Prof, we have over 253 nature and type of fisheries. Fisheries alone can make Sierra Leone be okay in terms of the economy. The mining sector, we have not been able to rationalize well. Of course, corporate social responsibility is something questionable in terms of equality for the poor. I come from a mining community rutile. For 50 years, we have been mining rutile in my community. And my community people, Prof, are living in abject poverty. There's no health center there. The road to Ruta is still dusty like anyone, which means there's a direct impact between the dust in the roads because of the mining activities to the health of our people. Worst of all, there are no farmlands anymore for the poor. The farm has been taken, the land factors has been taken away because of the mining activity. But when it comes to corporate social responsibility, being fair to them, it is not there. So I want to fix the royalties, the revenue we get from the mining sector, whether diamond, bauxite, that, so that we move Sierra Leone to meet some of the social and policy needs of our people. So in the first 100 days, I will ensure that we fix Sierra Leone economy to work for everyone, not just the few that take the mining royalty, the diamonds and the gold, and then engage in capital flight. I will deal with capital flight. I know there are lots of people in this country now, some studied overseas, some there, especially diaspora. You work for this country, but you have your houses in the States, in the US, in the UK. I always stop capital flight. You should not take our money, we work very hard, your tax money, and then you pay your mortgage houses in the US, and it's not fair to the poor. And therefore the exchange rate, as I tell you, imagine the exchange rate now. It has tripled in less than 6 months to over 500%. $1 is equivalent to 2,100 leones now. Before Tijan Kaba left, the dollar was 400 to 1. So it's a hopeless economy. In terms of macroeconomic policy and linking the macro and the micro determinants of economics, I have the ability and skill to make sure we create the enabling environment where farmers, entrepreneurs, youth investment program, we can re-engineer the economy to work for all. It has to be an economy for all through cooperative societies. And I think I am bringing back the cooperative concept. We went into war. I often tell people there are two types of interest group in our local communities and villages, Prof. One, our local people in Africa, they have their social interest group. In Sierra Leone here, we call them the Bondo Society, the traditional way people dance to their music and their culture in the villages. If you go all over Timbuktu, you come to Sierra Leone, they have their own way. I often say the villagers are experts in their own way. Then they have their economic interest group. Before the war, just after independence, you know, the economic interest group that people used to work for as collaboration was cooperative society. The foundation of our economy must not be based on IMF model or World Bank. It must be based on microeconomic determinants such as cooperative society. So I want to make sure they mobilize our local people, make sure that the youth are organized into cooperative society. Even teachers and university lecturers are organized into cooperative society, so that I will shift our budgeted spending from recurrent expenditure, where at the moment, political appointees are eating 85% of our budget. So I'll make sure that I move the economy in terms of the financial management arrangement from more of allocating resources to political appointees and increasing the wage bill of our people, shift that to development expenditure. In other words, they are basically in public policy, in public financial management. I'm very aware and experienced that you have three sectors of expenditure. The recurrent expenditure, which is about salaries and wages. Then you have capital expenditure, which is equipment and office things, and then development expenditure. Now we are spending very less on development expenditure, which has to do with many programs that could increase Sierra Leone from consumption to a production nation. So I want to see how I can shift the public expenditure pattern, not on wasteful spending or corrupt practices, which is entailed with recurrent expenditure, but to move the economy from where we support more recurrent expenditure to development expenditure, meaning putting people back to work, making sure manufacturing work. We do not have manufacturing. We produce gari, we produce eba. How can we make sure gari, we make sure we even Benimix, ginger, piassava, salt manufacture, we do not. Even pin, we have to import. We are import substitution country. I want to shift that balance, import-export. Where Sierra Leone, we should work very hard, what we call the unity of effort to ensure that our export earning increase more than our importation. It is, for God's sake, it is 21 years now. We should not be blaming the international. We should not be relying so much on foreign aid. But we need somebody who can inspire us to move for Sierra Leoneans every 8 hours to really put some energy into the work we do. But at the moment, we do not have a leadership style that can inspire our people, especially the youth. The youth budge is an opportunity, Prof. Everywhere in Africa, it's really an opportunity.
Yes.
So with inspiring leadership, somebody who can mentor and coach them, inspire them. At the moment, I'm trying to do some farming production, even when I'm campaigning, Prof. Because my parents come from a communal land tenure system where I can go back, the vegetables I eat, the coconut I make, the pear we do, I can go to the village. So when I get small money, I'm already investing in my communities. So if we all can do that through family support mechanism, cooperative society, whether for teachers, whether for farmers, then you can bring that unit of effort, then we can feed ourselves and export earning. I want to put Sierra Leone back on track where in the 60s we used to export, we were donating to the African Union and the ECOWAS as many as possible. We have enough to share with our brothers and sisters in Africa so that we can reduce poverty. But so I would definitely look at the economy as part of our priority. But I think in my 100 days, bringing Sierra Leoneans together under a common national agenda is my priority, because when you are together, as you spoke about the state of the union, when the union is together, we can be able to secure economic prosperity for every Sierra Leone, not just for a few that are enjoying our resources now.
That is correct. As they say, united we stand, and divided we fall. I hope the youth, you've mentioned the youth several times during your explanations. I hope the youth of Sierra Leone, the youth of Africa, because that's the future of Sierra Leone, that's the future of Africa, a better Sierra Leone. I hope they are listening, because your agenda is clear and it's exciting to hear. You know, it sounds really good in our ears, and with your background, it is promising. But you've mentioned something that is critical, which is very controversial. It's one of the, I mean, the cancer of Africa is developing rapidly, spreading around. The three-term agenda. People are elected for 2 terms, and then they want to force their way into a 3rd term. So the idea of changing, because you mentioned modifying the Constitution, the idea of changing the Constitution to satisfy selfish ego instead of meeting the needs of the people as you presented them, it's just quite obvious that it's going to go from bad to worse. What's your stand on changing the Constitution and to stay in power forever? 3 terms, 4th term, 5th term, etc., etc. What is your position on that? That's one leg of my question. The second leg is how do we change that Constitution? How do we modify our Constitution? How often? And who should be in charge of it? I understand you're talking about an institution in your country, but some people would rather give it back to the people through referendum. So what say the Dr. Sandy?
Absolutely, Prof. You know, I am currently leading a project for the sub-region, ECOWAS, and called Democracy, Election, and Unconstitutional Change of Government in West Africa. As you know, unconstitutional change of government is a protocol, supplemented protocol, which was adopted by the AU in 2009. Because of the many military coups and junta regime we were faced with. And everybody know democracy was under fire. And we saw that over time, that was subsided. But again, recently, we have started seeing the emergence of unconstitutional change of government. You know, Prof, that we are, at the moment, ECOWAS is struggling, and the international community is struggling in Mali with former President Jonathan Goodluck, the emissary that, to make sure we reverse military junta regime back to democratic regime. We've also seen Burkina Faso faced with the same. And then, of course, our neighbor, immediate neighborhood, Guinea-Conakry. So already West Africa, and there was also a coup attempt in Guinea-Bissau and Niger. So West Africa, which started showing the signs of democratic culture, and is reversing its gains. And what are the root causes of why those things? What are the triggers and drivers of those unconstitutional change of government? We all know it has been the wrong approach to constitutional review, as you mentioned. In the case of Conakry, we saw where Professor Alpha Conde, I hope my professor here will not change one day constitution to stay.
No.
But Professor Alpha Conde disappointed us a bit. We academics, elites, policy elites, we thought that he will have adhered to the African Union core values in terms of term limit, which is about 2 terms, which is there, but he did not honor that. He went and manipulated his way, and then the constitution was extended, reviewed, and renewed in a manner when it was sent to referendum. Yeah, I mean, we saw the percentage there. But yes, the Prof managed to extend his term. That was not a good way to go. We also, we missed it. It nearly happened in La Côte d'Ivoire. You are very aware what happened in Côte d'Ivoire, but we managed it carefully. So it is very obvious that if we don't manage our electoral processes well, we don't manage the human rights issues well, and then we try to tamper with the Constitution, they can be the trigger for military coups, the emergence of military. They will reverse our democratic values. So with all of this, and above all, on the continent and West Africa, we have seen the stress level posed by international terrorism, violent extremist group, radicalization. So the interplay between violent non-state armed groups, many of which are radicalization and violent, they are transforming to violent extremist group. And you know, I was in Libya 3 weeks ago. I even touched base with you, trying to understand the nature and type of non-state armed groups, their typology, especially the role of ISIS, the role of Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, all of this group in influencing the pressure for which the nation state in Africa is going through. So my general conclusion, Prof, is that number of spillover effects, whether for terrorism, military coups, transnational organized crime such as drug and human, can influence peace and stability in our country. So while we are struggling with those external threats to the survival of West Africa, and particularly Sierra Leone, we should not forget that we should not meddle with electoral processes. We should not meddle with tamper with constitution to extend our term. It can be an obvious trigger for constitutional attainment. So we reverse all the gains we have made in the last 20 years. So that is in my mind as I come, based on international best practice, my own practical hands-on experience, managing, supporting the 2010 constitutional review and referendum process, supporting the Kenyan government. I think when I was in the UN there, I think with those experiences we've seen, we can be able to complete the constitution. As I keep saying, the intention is for me, is not to go and manage, because I will just be coming to office. I've told you the source of making inspiring Sierra Leoneans to come under one umbrella, to enhance political cooperation among 18 tribe ethnic groups, and make sure that the 17 political parties, we all work together. The path I will take, number one, is to renew that energy through a national dialogue forum that will discuss how do we want to move our constitutional process, review process, to put it in the way we want it. The constitution should be based on ownership, citizens' ownership. It is not we, the politicians. So my principle, my first idea would be to facilitate that process, Prof. And you spoke about how do I want to do that? I've said I will allocate the rights. First of all, I will go to Parliament to make sure that Parliament legislates a law to clearly define process and approach to the constitutional review process. What step-by-step processes will I want to put in place? Once we build a consensus on that, after a national dialogue, which I will facilitate first, because definitely post-June 2024 election, I want to see bringing the country together in national political dialogue. That will be a priority. The winners, nobody wins in election. And my ability to nurture an alliance, a strategic cooperation among all political parties, as well as ethnic groups, my first priority will be to nurture a post-election high-level political dialogue. And in that high-level political dialogue, which is our post-election reconciliation, it will be one of the agenda will be to look at how do we want to move our constitutional review process down to a referendum. And what the principle I have in mind, like you mentioned, is the source to inspire Sierra Leoneans. Sierra Leoneans need, citizens. They need their dignity. We have to be honest with ourselves. We are lazy. Bra Bobo there, that's how we say it. Bra, that's man, your Bobo is here. Bra Bobo there, it's about consumption meal. By the time you come to the airport, you come down, Prof. Sometimes so shameful when I bring my foreign guests and people. By the time we come from the airport, the first thing I will greet you is Bra Bobo there. That means handout. Anybody want to get a trolley for you? It's all hand, it's all begging around. We cannot be a country of beggars. We have to be a country with dignity, somebody who can inspire us to be on the farmland, to make sure that we work very hard with dignity and pride. But that is missing at the moment. So everybody seems disillusioned. They have given up hope. So I want to inspire Sierra Leoneans through the constitutional review process. And that means get the Law Reform Commission, get a legal framework. By Parliament, we say, this is the step-by-step approach and process we want to do to complete this long-awaiting constitutional making process. Once a consensus, a national consensus is built on the approach, methodology, and process, I am fine. But I want to see that it is not only reviewing the Constitution, but enacting a referendum act. The last referendum we had on constitutional making process, Prof, in Sierra Leone is in 1978. We have no referendum act. And constitutional making process is not about parties. I don't want to see party colors. We are not going to, yes or no, we define the referendum questions. Why do we want this question? Meaning that, so it's going to be an inspiring moment. We want to see joy, people dancing on the street. We have a new constitution. Then after the new constitution is adopted, after the referendum, I will make sure either the Law Reform Commission will establish a National Constitutional Implementation Commission with clear benchmarks, provisions to see how we adhere to those principles. For regional and tribal balance, the preamble of our Constitution will make it clear that every job opportunity must be advertised. We must, in our democratic institution, to deal with exclusion, regionalism, and tribalism, we should be sensitive to regional and tribal balance in the selection and recruitment process of our people. So with all those visions, I think we'll burn a new Sierra Leone, a new state building project.
Yes, wonderful. What you're saying today, Dr. Sandy, one has to be factual, not biased, but it sounds like it would definitely resonate with millions of Sierra Leoneans and even beyond Sierra Leone, Africans all over the place. Thank you for coming to our show. We're running out of time already, and I have a final question for you, and then you'll give us your final word. You see, chances. I mean, you may be elected president, and if elected president, you will be president not for your party, but you'll be president of all Sierra Leoneans. So whether they be from the south or the east or north or center of the whole country. But you see, the problem is that there's still this kind of confusion. People confuse country, state, and nation. And I think you've been talking about a nation. Let us come together as a nation, putting the nation first. Our motherland, Sierra Leone, which is very appealing indeed. It seems that you understand it. I hope you make it abundantly clear, if not even better, on your campaign trail. But you also, if you're elected, you also be meeting with your colleagues, peer president on either at the level of ECOWAS or African Union. what will you tell them about this illness, because this cancer? What will you tell them? You might be finding yourself, maybe isolated because there are not many voices out there. I hope your arrival, your election will be not necessarily a revolution, but will bring about the change we're all dreaming about. So, what would you say to your voters today about that? What promise will you make? And what will you say to your peers, at the African Union level, ECOWAS level? Right now, we're going through issues in Senegal. Isn't that pitiful? What would you say to the voters and then to your peers when you are elected president?
Prof, interestingly, as I sit here, I have a split life. The split life, when I'm back home, I am transitioning to the presidential candidate. As a politician, chairman, leader of the National Unity and Reconciliation Party, itself the principle of national unity, as you mentioned, is our focus. But also, a country that went into war for over almost 2 decades. The spirit of reconciliation, dealing with transitional justice. One of the models in Africa we know is clear that Sierra Leone transitional justice system using the special court, the hybrid court, had worked. But yet, the question I continue to ask many are the victims of war, the amputees, the war wounded, the sexually abused women during the war. We have an association of them, Prof. The war wounded, the ex-servicemen, all of those, including the rebels, the civil defense forces, almost they make up 61% of our current population. The question that rings in my heart each time I come home from the work in the United Nations, whether in Kenya, in Congo, in Senegal, in Dhaka, Bamako, everywhere, or in the US, I ask myself and many, are the victims of our war 20 years or 21 years down the road, are they in a better situation today or worse off? Sadly, they are worse off. Last year, my party facilitated what we call one district, one dialogue across the nation. And why? Because January 18, in the TRC report, the Truth and Reconciliation Report, which was published in 2004-5, Prof, one of recommendation 8 saying, every year, January 18, Sierra Leoneans in their little corner everywhere, that was the day when the late President Tijan Kaba, with all the factors, the parties to the conflict, plus the moral guarantors you mentioned, ECOWAS, AU, United Nations, Commonwealth, everyone was at the airport in Lungi, in Poloko district, some part, when late President Kaba declared a statement to say, our conflict is over now, and that he's very thankful to the international community. So meaning January 18 is very significant on the part of Sierra Leone. And so when the TRC recommendations were made, the head of the TRC chairman made it very clear, Bishop Humper, J.C. Humper. He said, this report is a comprehensive report about the investigation that has been done on the root causes of the war in Sierra Leone, whether they found out that it was bad governance, corruption, wasteful spending, regionalism, and tribal ethnic identity politics under a one-party state. And then propose the constitutional making process, establishment of a victims compensation and reparation commission trust fund, all those economic governance and natural resource management and governance, they are so abundant is that. But successive government after Tijan Kaba has not been able to follow through the recommendations of the TRC. So our country is bleeding as I speak here. Over the last year, I came from Kenya and everywhere, put the amputees, war victims, to put smiles on their faces. I will send the photos to you. The camps that we are providing were done by the Norwegian Refugee Council. There are hostels, there are hotels, there are shelter, water, affordable things. Nobody is carrying them. They have been excluded from the national budget. We are so inhuman. I'm sorry. But these guys are living in hollow. Their national executive office, the Amphitheatre War Association office, is close to my house. I see them every morning. People who died for democracy, their hands were chopped off. We are forgetting about them. Politics of exclusion. We increase. So my passion really is not to come and acquire unexplained wealth like what our politicians are doing. No. I can even do research, policy advice. I can work with you, Prof, and continue. So I keep telling my colleagues at the AU, because at the moment, I'm the chairperson of the AU Civil Society Peace and Security Council. So I keep saying, look, there are potential spillover effects of what is happening in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and many post-conflict countries if we don't consolidate those places. We need Sierra Leone for two reasons: ECOWAS, AU, UN. I hope colleagues are listening, especially the Nigerian colleagues, the Ghanaians, Senegalese, Guinea, all those whose sons and daughters, their blood was casted here in Sierra Leone to die for peace for ECOWAS. ECOMOD, we are so thankful to ECOWAS. But yet, if you sit down for two reasons, elections don't go properly in Sierra Leone, they go down well in Liberia, and we reverse back to unconstitutional change of government, then we are back to square one as a community. I don't think Sierra Leonean alone. I'm a child of the ECOWAS community, having been a regional director for ECOWAS based in Bamako for 4 years, covered the 60 member states. I have friends, I have brothers and sisters. When people ask me, where are you from? I say, I'm a child of the community. That is ECOWAS. And that is how I think. So I believe in regionalism. I believe the way Sierra Leone will survive in a world of interdependency, globalization, and regionalism is for us to work through that, especially to deal with the burgeoning threats, multiple and complex challenges that are faced by Africans. On the continent, how do we make sure we attract foreign direct investment? When we have terrorism, we have radicalization taking place, the global health crisis, we manage it a little bit, but again, the supreme rule of law. And then we want to manage the constitutional processes, like you said, change constitution to increase term limit. We want to stay in power forever. So those challenges, definitely, if I am the next president, guess what, Prof? June 24th will be on my birthday. So what I am appealing to Sierra Leoneans on that day, and people who are friends of the international community, especially ECOWAS people, give me that opportunity to make sure that the threats, the multiple and complex challenges to our survival as Sierra Leoneans and then the ECOWAS citizens and Africa, I can honestly continue to contribute. It's about continuity. I've done this for 2 or more decades, but I'm not happy. I can go to bed, get a square meal with my family, but I still am not happy. Psychology. When I worked in Somalia for 4, 5, 6 or more years, when I saw Al-Shabaab, women and children defecting from Al-Shabaab, I'm not happy, I'm in trauma. I've worked in the Lake Chad Basin, led the process of the review, the research, analysis, integrated analysis, and getting a regional stabilization strategy for areas recovered from Boko Haram. I go to Cameroon far north. I go to Jamina, where the multinational joint task force headquarters is, with Major General Irabo, who is now the Chief of Defense Staff of the Nigerian Army. Niger, that Difa region. Many of these places have been in the theater. Me and the first commander in Somalia, for example, we have been missing 2 ambushes. We lost the deputy first commander from Burundi in Mogadishu right before my own eyes after our meeting. So with all of this feeling, including my recent mission to Mozambique in Cabo Delgado, where Asuna Wajama, why the root causes again is about poverty, inequality. Their argument is that Mozambique has so much rich oil. Total is there. The oil revenue, they are excluded from the oil revenue. You see the houses, the health sector, and everything is not looking good. So as a son of the African thing, yes, why we attract foreign direct investment, and we fear with our people. So I think I'll be very honest with you, Prof, to move, not to dictate for my fellow head of state, but having served both Sierra Leone up to from village level to state house to contribute in terms of national security, and now on the continent ECOWAS, have closely been involved into governance issues, regional peace and security, analyzing the threats through an integrated analysis of the risks and uncertainties that hang on to Africa. I think I'll be very honest to contribute, ready to contribute to how do we reduce and prevent the risks and uncertainties, the shocks that Africa face through Africa's early warning system, the continental early warning system. These structures, institutions are there. APSA is there, common defense and security policy is there. The African peace and security architecture is there. Yet, the brigade headquarters, which is supposed to be for West Africa, ECOMOG, should be in Sierra Leone. A project Senegal and Sierra Leone competed for. By the way, Malik, we won the bid against our brothers and sisters in Senegal. We are supposed to establish the logistical stabilization force, logistics for the whole of ECOWAS in Sierra Leone. So when I come, Prof, we'll talk about that some other day, but that is part of my Big Six agenda, to ensure that the way to do with regional risks and uncertainty, spillover effect from terrorism, radicalization, political instability, unconstitutional change of government, is to make sure that we have a combined regional force, which we'll call stabilization intervention. So that by the time our boys, the khaki boys, attempt military coup, collective interest like we did in the Gambia, in Guinea-Bissau, we can be able to try to stabilize that environment, whether it's global health crisis. So I want to operationalize that base under my command as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Sierra Leone, having understand the continental requirement in terms of this. I will ensure I support the African Union architecture of building an African peace and security architecture, which have long been standing. From 2011, we have not been able to. Libya is supposed to host the North African Brigade headquarters. The only one that is doing well now is ISCOM Brigade, that's based in Karen, in Kenya, to ensure that they deal with regional spillover effect from threats that are coming to disturb, to destabilize our economy and our stability. So what I want to do, we don't know whether the Chinese are coming, the US is coming, the UK is coming for Africa. So I want to contribute to making sure that our common defense and security policy, because we have the natural resource abundant thing, but our threat and risk might be when we are doing fine, we cannot be able to secure ourselves. So I want to make sure that the APSA works, the common defense and security is operationalized so that we can reduce the threat to the continent, as well as in our small country, Sierra Leone, so that we talk about free. When we go to the World Trade Organization, there's trade and competition. Now we have APSA, the APTA, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, trade across different regions. Maybe I'm sure one of my principles is to make sure that in promoting my foreign policy is to make sure that we operationalize the African Continental Free Trade Agreement so that food inequality, we cannot continue to depend on Ukraine and Russia for bread and butter.
Yes.
It's a shame. It's a shame. So my thinking is those regional instruments, protocols, and treaties we have signed on to, whether the Africa Agenda 2063, the continent's agenda on Charter on Democracy and Elections and Good Governance, and well as the economic policy thing, we can rationalize them together with people. As I think, as a son of Africa, in the spirit of solidarity, I have both the domestic policy experience and the foreign policy experience to put not only Sierra Leone back on track, but to contribute to the prosperity of the Africa we love for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jonathan Sandy, JPJ, for President 2023 in Sierra Leone. This has brought us to the close of this interview. Very exciting. We are excited for you. We're looking forward to seeing and hearing more. And on the campaign trail, if you need us, come back before that D-Day, June 24th, 2023. We wish you well. You are a proud son of Africa. You go beyond Sierra Leone. I think you are Pan-African, and that makes a difference. You were talking about continuity, and that continuity is about the work you've done at all levels. You're not talking about continuity in Sierra Leone. You sound like an agent of change, and drastic change, but realistic change. To bring Sierra Leone back on track and the right track for peace, reconciliation, and prosperity. Thank you, Mr. Shall I call you ambitiously already, Mr. President? We wish you well. Currently chairman of the Regional Center for Governance and Security Policy Initiative. And with that background in economics, PhD in economics, and expertise in national security, it came across really well, interesting, because security for you is broader than national integrity, defense, and Islamist fighting the terrorists. But economy or economics is also about security, food security, peace security. It's about security. Thank you for coming to our show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you all, Malik and everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And as I say, I will not hesitate to be part of you again and making sure that my last message to my people, I'm here, my candidacy represent someone who can unite our strength to secure economic prosperity for all Sierra Leoneans. I look forward to you voting for me on my birthday, June 24. My name is Jonathan. As you know, both in the Quran and the Bible means a gift from God. And I want to leave the international community, not permanently, but to return back home to help put Sierra Leone back on track, where President Tijan Kaba and all those critical ECOWAS, Abacha, Lansana Conte, Abla Ward, all those generations had moved Sierra Leone from war to peace. So thank you, and I hope that as a generational leader, all of you, Prof, when I say generational leader, it's not about the age. Those of us in the Pan-Africa agenda, we can be able to move not only Sierra Leone forward, but our continent as a continent of dignity. Thank you again, and it's my pleasure always.
Thank you. And the same thanks are extended to our viewers all over the world, especially in Sierra Leone, those potential voters. I hope you did not turn deaf ears to this interview. Anywhere we post it, it's already on YouTube. Those of you who followed us live, thank you. Go subscribe so that you can hear more from us. You can see more videos about not just politics, but about the state of the union, country by country, and continentally in terms of Africa in general. So thank you to all our viewers and potential viewers, potential subscribers. We thank you very much. And we'll be remiss if we did not thank our producer, Malik Sa from Senegal, right now at our headquarters in Minnesota, United States. And I was your servant, Professor Desiree Salif Balubi from Benin, but right now in Virginia. Go Sierra Leone, go Africa. Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité en toute beauté de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.
Votre attention s'il vous plaît. IPTV Services. Tempo Afrique TV vous offre 6000 chaînes de télévision en direct de l'Afrique, de l'Europe et des États-Unis. Toutes vos chaînes de télévision préférées sous un seul toit. Pour des informations, appelez le numéro suivant +1 612 804 02 95 ou allez sur notre site web tempoafrique.com. Achetez maintenant $193 pour toute l'année, plus l'expédition et le TV Box.